The first thing that failed that morning was the gravity in Docking Bay 12. It didn't fail dramatically. It didn't scream or spark or implode into philosophical despair. It simply decided that down was optional. Ryan Foster noticed because his coffee drifted away from him with quiet betrayal. He stared at the cup hovering inches from his nose, rotating slowly in midair like it was considering a better career path. A thin ribbon of steam coiled toward the ceiling, or what used to be the ceiling before orientation became a matter of opinion. "Don't you dare," he warned the cup. The cup did not care. Around him, wrenches, diagnostic tablets, and three very important screws rose in lazy spirals. Somewhere behind the hull of the half-disassembled freighter he was repairing, a crate labeled "fragile." Quantum regulators began tumbling in slow, judgmental cartwheels. Ryan sighed and pushed off the floor, formerly the floor, and caught the regulators before they could achieve enlightenment. "Station control," he said into his wristband comm, twisting midair and snagging his coffee with impressive desperation. "Doc 12 has decided to experiment with modern art." "Again!" A bored voice crackled back. "Localized gravitic fluctuation. Should stabilize in 30 seconds. Last time you said that, I had to scrape a mechanic off the ventilation grid. 29 seconds. Ryan took a careful sip from the drifting cup. It was lukewarm and tasted faintly of coolant, which meant he had probably set it down on the wrong surface again. He made a mental note to stop doing that. He had made that note many times before. Gravity returned with a polite thud. Everything fell. Ryan hit the deck shoulder first. The regulators slammed into his chest and his coffee committed a tragic and irreversible act across his shirt. He lay there for a moment, staring up at the underbelly of the freighter, Aurora's Respite, which currently resembled a dissected mechanical whale. "Good morning to you too," he muttered. Port Meridian had a talent for these small indignities. The station drifted in neutral space between three minor empires and one major grudge, stitched together from decommissioned cruisers and stubborn diplomacy. It was a place where warships came to refuel, smugglers came to pretend they were traders, and engineers like Ryan came to make sure nothing exploded unless it was scheduled to. He rolled onto his side and reached for his diagnostic scanner. The Respite's engine core flickered in holographic projection above his wrist. Plasma conduits pulsed unevenly, like a heart skipping beats out of boredom. "You're fine," he told it. The engine responded by emitting a low, offended hum. "Okay, you're mostly fine." He slid beneath the ship's exposed belly and began recalibrating the flux stabilizers. The smell of ionized metal filled the air. Somewhere down the bay, a cargo hauler's reactor coughed like it had swallowed a comet. Ryan liked this part of the job, the quiet conversation between himself and machinery. Machines were honest. They didn't pretend they weren't overheating. He was elbow deep in a plasma manifold when the station lights dimmed. Not flickered, dimmed. The sound followed a second later, a distant vibration, deep and resonant, rolling through the docking bay like thunder wrapped in steel. Ryan froze. That wasn't a gravitic hiccup. That was mass. A shadow crept across the bay floor, swallowing the light panels in patient increments. Ryan slid out from under the Respite and stood, wiping his hands on a rag that had long ago surrendered its original color. Dock 12's external blast doors were opening. Through the widening aperture, something enormous eclipsed the stars. The ship did not glide in like the traders and patrol craft that frequented Meridian. It advanced with quiet authority, a blade-shaped silhouette edged in pale blue shield light. Its hull bore the insignia of the Stellar Legion, a spiral of silver encircling a star split in two. Ryan blinked. "Oh," he said softly, "that's inconvenient." The Stellar Legion did not visit neutral ports for routine maintenance. They arrived when diplomacy had teeth. The warship aligned with mathematical precision, thrusters whispering as docking clamps extended. The vibration intensified, then settled into a low, controlled hum that seemed to reverberate inside Ryan's ribs. Other mechanics had gathered along the edges of the bay. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the cargo hauler's coughing reactor seemed to reconsider its life choices. Ryan glanced at his grease-streaked shirt and sighed. "Of course it's today," his comm buzzed again. "Dock 12, station control said, no longer bored. "You have incoming high-priority clients. Stellar Legion Command Vessel Dawn Spear. General Kiera herself is aboard. Ryan stared at the looming hull. Are you absolutely certain it's her? Yes. He considered pretending his tools were broken, or that he had suddenly retired, or died peacefully beneath a freighter. Why me? He asked. You're the best independent engineer in this sector. That feels like flattery designed to cause me stress. It's both. The clamps locked with a final metallic thunder. A boarding ramp extended from the warship's flank, unfolding in deliberate segments. Blue-white light spilled down onto the docking floor, cutting through the dimness like a blade drawn from a sheath. Ryan swallowed. He had seen hollows of General Kiera. Everyone had. The most powerful warrior in the quadrant, the commander who had turned losing battles into legends. They said she could calculate enemy trajectories faster than most tactical AIs. They said she once stared down a mutiny without raising her voice. They did not say what you were supposed to do if she walked into your workshop. The ramp touched the deck. Silence settled, heavy and anticipatory. Then she appeared, tall, armored in dark alloy, etched with faint, luminous lines that pulsed like contained starlight. Her hair fell in a silver-black cascade down her back, and from beneath it extended the long, elegant ears of her people, tapering gracefully past her jawline. She looked human at first glance, unsettlingly so, but those ears marked her heritage unmistakably, an echo of ancient evolution among distant suns. Her gaze swept the bay once, sharp and assessing. Behind her, Legion officers descended in precise formation. Ryan felt suddenly aware of the coffee stain spreading across his chest. "Dockmaster Ryan Foster?" one of the officers called. He raised a hand. "Engineer," he corrected. "Dockmaster sounds like I own things." General Kiera's eyes shifted toward him. Time did something unusual. It slowed, not in the dramatic, chronal distortion way of malfunctioning drive cores, but in a subtle, biological manner. The air seemed to thin. She stopped walking. Her expression, carved from command and discipline, fractured. Her breath caught. Ryan had expected intimidation, perhaps a withering assessment of his posture, possibly an immediate demand for repair estimates. He had not expected tears. They welled in her eyes without hesitation, spilling down her cheeks in silent, unstoppable lines. The docking bay remained utterly still. One of her officers looked alarmed. Another looked like he had just witnessed a supernova in a teacup. Ryan blinked. Is something on my face?" he asked, instinctively patting his cheek. She took a step toward him. Her gaze did not waver. It searched his features with a kind of stunned desperation, as though confirming a miracle or confronting a ghost. Her lips parted, but no words came. Ryan, who had successfully repaired antimatter leaks and once negotiated payment from a pirate using only sarcasm, found himself entirely unequipped. "I promise," he said carefully, "I've never blown up a battalion, at least not intentionally." A strangled sound escaped one of the officers behind her, but Kiera did not react to the joke. She whispered something under her breath, too soft for him to catch. Then impossibly the most feared general in the galaxy began to cry harder. Ryan's heart pounded in confused rhythm. He had the distinct sensation that his morning had just escalated beyond warranty coverage, and he had no idea why. No one in Docking Bay 12 had ever rehearsed for the moment when the most powerful military commander in the quadrant stood in front of a grease-stained engineer and cried like the universe had personally insulted her. Ryan's first instinct was to look behind him. He turned slowly, expecting to find someone heroic, someone with medals, a tragic backstory, possibly dramatic lighting. There was only the half-open engine core of the Aurora's respite and a crate of misaligned thruster valves. He looked back at her. "Okay," he said carefully, raising both hands in surrender to a situation that did not appear armed, but felt dangerous anyway. "I'm going to assume this isn't about the invoice." General Kiera took another step forward. Up close, her composure was not gone. It was fighting. He could see it in the tightness of her jaw, in the way her long ears trembled ever so slightly, as if reacting to frequencies no one else could hear. Her tears did not weaken her presence. If anything, they sharpened it. She lifted a hand. For one unhelpful second, Ryan wondered if she was about to strike him, Instead, her fingers hovered near his face, not touching, as though afraid he might dissolve. "It's not possible," she said quietly. Her voice carried the weight of command even through grief. Ryan swallowed. "That's generally what I say before a reactor breach." One of her officers shifted, clearly debating whether humor was treason. Kiera did not smile. She studied him with painful intensity. "What is your full name?" she asked. "Ryan Elias Foster," he replied automatically. The silence that followed felt engineered. Her breath hitched. Behind her, an officer whispered something urgent in a language Ryan didn't recognize. It sounded sharp and layered, like harmonics overlaid on speech. Elias. Ryan felt the name land between them like an unexploded device. "That's my middle name," he added because silence made him nervous. "Family thing. My father insisted it sounded dignified. I think he just liked how it looked on forms." Kiera closed her eyes for a brief second, as if steadying herself against a memory. When she opened them again, they were not searching him anymore. They were seeing someone else. "Captain Elias Foster," she said. The name did not belong to him, but it fit in the air around him with unsettling precision. Ryan let out a small breath. "That's not me." "I know," she said. The way she said it carried both certainty and ache. Her officers looked uneasy now, not because of him, but because of what her composure's fracture implied. The Stellar Legion was built on strength, on myth as much as strategy. Legends did not cry in docking bays. Ryan scratched the back of his neck. "I'm guessing he was important." Kira's eyes flickered toward him again. "He saved my battalion," she said. The words did not sound rehearsed. They sounded excavated. Ryan shifted his weight. "That's a high bar. I mostly save cargo manifests from poor wiring decisions." "He disobeyed a direct retreat order," she continued, voice steadying. "Our lines were collapsing on Akrith. The Ashen Combine had deployed gravitic mines across the valley. We were trapped." The name Akrith resonated faintly in Ryan's memory. News feeds, casualty counts, victory reports wrapped around loss. "He commandeered a damaged carrier," she said, "drew their artillery away from our position. He transmitted false troop signatures to make them believe reinforcements had arrived." Ryan blinked. "That's bold." "It was reckless," she corrected softly, "and brilliant." The docking bay felt smaller. "He knew the carrier would not survive sustained bombardment," she said. "He calculated the window we needed. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Ryan tried to imagine making a decision measured in seconds and lives. "He held for 4 minutes and 21. Her voice did not break this time. "He exceeded projections." Ryan let out a slow breath. "That sounds like something I'd do," he said. "Overperform by 9 seconds and then forget to submit the paperwork." One of the officers choked on something that might have been a suppressed laugh. Kira's gaze flicked to Ryan again. The faintest crack appeared in the grief. "He smiled during the transmission," she said. Ryan shifted again, uncomfortable with the way her eyes mapped his face. "He apologized for disobeying orders," she continued. "Then he said he hoped I would win." Ryan's throat felt dry. "And you did," he said. "Yes." She did not elaborate. The war had turned after Akrith. Everyone knew that. "What happened to him?" Ryan asked quietly, though he already knew the shape of the answer. "The carrier's core destabilized," she said. "The Ashen artillery struck before he could disengage. There were no recoverable remains." The words were clinical. The silence afterward was not. Ryan glanced down at his hands, still faintly stained with coolant. "My father served in logistics," he said after a moment. "Never front line. He used to say the universe doesn't need heroes. It needs people who fix the holes heroes leave behind." Kira's ears angled slightly forward. "He died when I was young," Ryan added. "Station accident. Wrong valve sequence. He saved 3 workers before the decompression took him." He hadn't meant to say that. He rarely did. Kiera studied him, and this time she was not looking for a ghost. "Your father's name?" she asked. "Thomas Foster." She nodded once. "Elias Foster was not related to you," she said carefully. "Our records confirm no genetic overlap." Ryan exhaled in exaggerated relief. "Good. I'm not secretly part of an elaborate resurrection program. That would really complicate my schedule." One of the officers finally allowed himself a brief, incredulous smile. Kira's lips curved, barely but undeniably. "It is coincidence," she said. "Nothing more." "Coincidence with dramatic flair," Ryan replied. She took a slow breath. "I had not seen his face in 3 cycles," she admitted. "Not outside archived footage. I believed I was prepared for memory." "And then I showed up covered in coffee," Ryan said. "Yes." The word almost sounded amused. Silence shifted again. Lighter now, though still threaded with something fragile. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. "So," he said, gesturing vaguely toward her warship, "what brings the most formidable fleet in known space to my slightly chaotic workshop?" Her composure settled back into place like armor reassembling. "The Dawn's spear sustained micro-fractures along its port shield emitters during a skirmish in the Helion expanse," she said. "Our engineers stabilized the damage. We require recalibration of the field harmonics." Ryan blinked. "You crossed 3 sectors for harmonics?" "We crossed 3 sectors for neutrality," she corrected. "And discretion?" He nodded slowly. "You think someone's watching?" "I assume someone is always watching." Ryan glanced up at the immense hull of her command vessel. "Well," he said, clapping his hands once, partly to shake off tension and partly because it felt like the right thing to do. "I can take a look, but if your emitters start crying too, I'm charging extra." A faint, real laugh escaped her. It transformed her. Not into something softer exactly, but into something alive beyond legend. Her officers visibly relaxed. Ryan pointed toward a diagnostic platform. "If you'll have your crew grant me access codes, I'll run a sweep. And maybe, you know, avoid any more existential surprises." Kiera held his gaze for a moment longer. "I apologize," she said quietly, "for the display." Ryan shrugged. "Port Meridian's seen worse. Last month a diplomat fainted because his pet nebula changed color." Her eyes lingered on him, not with grief now, but with curiosity. "You are not what I expected," she said. "That's been a lifelong theme." She inclined her head. "Proceed with the diagnostics, Engineer Foster." He gave a small mock salute. "As you command, General, though if I accidentally fix more than you asked for, don't be alarmed." As she turned toward her officers, issuing crisp directives, Ryan exhaled slowly. His pulse was still elevated. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the jokes and reflexive sarcasm, something unsettled shifted. He didn't look like a hero. He didn't feel like one. But the way she had said that name, Elias, it lingered in the air long after she moved away. And for the first time in years, Ryan felt as though the universe had just nudged him toward a story much larger than faulty gravity panels and temperamental engines. He only hoped it came with clear instructions. By the time Ryan gained temporary access to the Dawn Spear, Docking Bay 12 had developed a personality disorder. Half the station was pretending nothing unusual was happening. The other half was pretending very loudly that they had always expected the Stellar Legion's flagship to park next to a freighter, missing 2 hull plates and a decorative antenna. Ryan stood before the access console extended from the warship's hull. The Legion insignia glowed softly above it, rotating with serene authority. A Legion officer held out a slim authorization rod. "Your biometrics have been cleared for limited systems interaction." "Limited sounds safe," Ryan said. "Unlimited sounds like paperwork." The officer did not smile. Legion officers rarely did. It was probably in the training manual. The docking seal hissed open, and Ryan stepped across the threshold. The interior of the Dawn Spear did not hum like civilian ships. It resonated. Every surface carried faint lines of energy threading through it, like veins beneath skin. The corridor lighting adjusted to his height and gait within seconds, scanning him in silent assessment. "Oh, good," Ryan muttered. "It judges people." The officer walking beside him replied flatly, "It optimizes." "Right, that." They moved toward the port shield emitter chamber. Along the way, crew members passed with precise efficiency. Their uniforms were immaculate, their movements coordinated without appearing rehearsed. No one bumped into anyone. No one dropped a hydrospanner. Ryan felt personally attacked. The emitter chamber doors parted with a whisper. Inside, the shield core rotated within a suspended lattice of magnetic rings. Fractured harmonics flickered across the surface in faint distortions. barely visible unless you knew how to look. Ryan did. He stepped closer, activating his wrist scanner. Data cascaded in layered projections. Microfractures along the tertiary coupling points, he said. Your stabilization routines are compensating, but they're overcorrecting by 0.03%. The officer blinked. You assessed that in under 10 seconds. Ryan shrugged. I've had worse mornings. He circled the core slowly. The damage wasn't severe, but it was deliberate. The fractures followed a pattern too symmetrical to be random stress. You said Helian expanse, Ryan murmured. Yes. You didn't just take fire, he said. You were probed. The officer's expression tightened. Ryan leaned closer to the holographic projection. See this modulation? Someone mapped your shield frequency in real time. They were testing your reaction latency. Is that a concern? The officer asked. It's never not a concern when someone measures how fast you blink. Silence settled briefly. Ryan tapped into the emitter's diagnostic matrix. I'll recalibrate your harmonics, but I'd recommend cycling your frequency unpredictably for a few weeks. Throw off anyone who thinks they've memorized your rhythm. The officer inclined his head. I will relay the suggestion. Ryan paused. Not suggestion, he said gently. Advice from someone who once had a pirate memorize his docking schedule. The officer almost smiled again. Almost. As Ryan began rerouting the harmonic flow, he became aware of another presence in the chamber. He didn't turn immediately. He felt it. General Kiera stood at the far end of the room, observing in silence. Her armor had been partially disengaged, resting in segmented plates along her shoulders and arms. Without the full battle configuration, she seemed no less formidable, just less distant. You read the damage quickly, she said. Ryan kept his focus on the shield matrix. Your ship's very talkative. It does not speak. Not in words, but everything has tells. He adjusted a magnetic ring by 0.5 degree. The fractures shimmered, then dimmed. You believe the attack was reconnaissance, she said. I believe someone's curious, Ryan replied, and curiosity rarely travels alone. She stepped closer. Your confidence is unusual, she said. He glanced at her briefly. I once fixed a mining rig while it was still actively exploding. After that, shield emitters feel manageable. That is not reassuring. It worked. A faint silence stretched between them, but it was no longer heavy. Why did you become an engineer? She asked. Ryan paused, fingers hovering over the control interface. No one else in my family could fix anything, he said lightly. Seems statistically necessary. She waited. He sighed. My father believed maintenance was a form of quiet heroism, he said. He thought the people who prevent disasters deserve more recognition than the ones who survive them. And you agree? I think someone has to. He resumed the recalibration. The shield lattice responded, frequencies realigning in subtle cascades of light. Kiera watched the changes carefully. You are not intimidated, she observed. Oh, I'm very intimidated, Ryan replied. I'm just good at multitasking. Her lips curved again, slightly. You joke frequently. It reduces the odds of existential dread. Does it succeed? Mixed results. He finished the harmonic reset and initiated a randomized frequency cycle. The microfractures vanished from the projection. There, he said. Your shields are now slightly more unpredictable than before, like a cat. I do not understand the comparison. They appear calm, then suddenly chaos. She considered that. That is accurate. A quiet pulse vibrated through the chamber as the system locked into its new configuration. Emitter integrity restored to optimal parameters, the officer announced. Ryan stepped back. No charge for the chaos metaphor, he added. Kiera dismissed the officer with a glance. They were alone in the chamber now, surrounded by the faint hum of the stabilized energy. You sense the pattern quickly, she said. You think like a tactician. I think like someone who doesn't want to get blown up. She studied him again, not searching for resemblance this time, but for alignment. Elias thought the same way, she said softly. Ryan stiffened slightly. I'm not him, he said gently. I know. The words carried no confusion now. But you approach danger similarly, she continued, with calculation and irreverence. That's just self-preservation with personality. Silence lingered. Outside the chamber, the Legion crew moved with disciplined rhythm. Inside, something quieter unfolded. I did not expect to feel unbalanced again, she admitted. Not after so long. Ryan leaned against the console. I don't recommend gravity fluctuations, he said. They're inconvenient. Her ears tilted subtly, a motion he was beginning to recognize as curiosity. You deflect, she said. Of course I deflect. You're a legendary commander who cried in my docking bay. I have no training module for that. She held his gaze. You did not exploit the moment. Exploit? Many would. Ryan frowned. That would require a level of ambition I simply don't possess before lunch. For a heartbeat, she looked startled. Then she laughed. Not loudly, not theatrically, but genuinely. The sound echoed lightly against the energy lattice. Ryan blinked. Well, he said, there it is again. Proof you're not entirely made of battle strategy. I am not, she replied. The laughter faded, replaced by something steadier. You understand, she said slowly, that your presence complicates nothing strategically. That's comforting, but it complicates me. Ryan did not respond immediately. He considered the glowing shield core, the silent hum of Legion technology, the vastness of the warship beyond the chamber walls. I don't intend to, he said finally. I know. She stepped back, composure settling once more. The Dawn's spear will remain docked for 2 cycles, she said. Additional inspections may be required. Ryan nodded. I'll try not to resemble anyone else in the meantime. Her expression softened. That would be appreciated. As she turned to leave the chamber, Ryan felt the strange pull again. Not destiny, not heroism, but proximity to something larger than himself. He glanced at the stabilized shield core. Someone had tested the ship. Someone had measured its defenses. And now, for reasons he did not fully understand, he felt measured too. He exhaled slowly. Well, he murmured to the humming energy field, let's hope no one's planning to poke the cat again. By the second cycle of the Dawn Spear's stay, Port Meridian had become unnaturally polite. Smugglers filed correct docking plans. Traders paid tariffs without creative arithmetic. Even the station's notoriously temperamental AI stopped rerouting people through maintenance shafts for efficiency. Ryan did not trust it. He stood on a maintenance gantry overlooking Dock 12, watching Legion technicians run synchronized diagnostics on auxiliary systems. Everything moved with crisp precision. Too quiet, he muttered. His wrist console chimed. Incoming encrypted transmission, Dawn's spear. He accepted. General Kiera's image resolved in a tight projection over his wrist. We have detected a minor fluctuation in our aft sensor grid, she said. Define minor. 0.02 variance in subspace echo return. Ryan grimaced. That's not minor. That's someone whispering at you from far away. You believe it connected to the earlier probe. I believe coincidence is a lazy explanation. She nodded once. We are expanding the scan. Don't, he said immediately. A flicker crossed her expression. Explain. If someone's mapping you, they want reaction data. The more aggressively you search, the more you confirm they matter. Silence. You propose we ignore it? She asked. I propose we yawn, Ryan replied. Make small adjustments. Don't spike your power signature. Act bored. A faint pause. You are advising the Stellar Legion to appear bored. Yes, it's deeply unsettling. Her lips twitched. You may be correct. I usually am when it involves someone else trying to be clever. She considered him a moment longer. Join me on the command deck, she said. We will evaluate together. Ryan blinked. You want the guy who spilled coffee on himself 2 days ago on your command deck? Yes. That feels like a risk. I assess it as manageable. He exhaled. All right, but if I press something catastrophic, I'm blaming the layout. Minutes later, he stood inside the Dawn Spear's command deck, trying not to look impressed. He failed. A curved wall of projection displays tracked hundreds of sensor feeds simultaneously. Stellar drift patterns shimmered. Traffic vectors threaded in quiet arcs around the station. The Legion insignia glowed above the central tactical interface. Officers manned their stations with restrained intensity. Ryan leaned toward Kiera. If I accidentally sneeze, does this launch missiles? No, she said calmly. That requires 2 confirmations. That's comforting. A sensor officer spoke. Subspace echo variance persists. No identifiable vessel within scan radius. Ryan stepped closer to the projection. Overlay civilian traffic signatures, he said. The officer glanced at Kiera. Do it, she ordered. Layers of cargo haulers and transport shuttles appeared. Ryan narrowed his eyes. There, he said, pointing to a faint distortion near a cluster of supply ships. That shimmer shouldn't bend like that. It is minimal, the officer said. It's intentional, Ryan replied. Someone's piggybacking off civilian traffic to mass signal reflection. Kiera leaned forward slightly. Cloaked vessel? She asked. Not fully cloaked, Ryan said. More like, half hiding, testing how close they can drift before you notice. A beat of silence. The sensor officer adjusted the magnification. The distortion pulsed. Confirmed anomaly, the officer said. Ryan folded his arms. They're close enough to taste your shield frequency, but not close enough to commit. Kiera's voice remained steady. Options? Ryan exhaled. If you light them up with a full spectrum scan, they'll retreat and report. If you do nothing, they gather more data. Your alternative? He grinned slightly. Annoy them. Several officers turned toward him. Redirect a maintenance drone, he continued. Have it drift accidentally toward that traffic cluster. Make it emit a messy, noisy diagnostic pulse. Something civilian, sloppy. You wish to contaminate the data, Kiera said. Exactly. Make their measurements useless, like trying to eavesdrop during a parade. A flicker of interest passed across the tactical displays. Kiera nodded. Deploy a drone. An officer executed the command. On the projection, a small maintenance drone detached from the station and drifted toward the anomaly. It began broadcasting erratic, non-standard emissions. The distortion wavered. Ryan watched carefully. There, he said softly. They're recalibrating. They didn't expect interference. The shimmer shifted position. Anomaly is retreating, the sensor officer reported. Ryan smiled faintly. They wanted clean data. We gave them static. Kiera regarded him with quiet intensity. You think like someone who has been underestimated, she said. Ryan shrugged. I fix ships. Most people assume I don't notice when they're sneaking around. The distortion faded from the projection. Contact loss, the officer said. A subtle release of tension rippled through the deck. Ryan leaned back against a console. So, he said lightly, was that your version of excitement, or do you have something louder scheduled? Kiera's gaze lingered on the now clear sensor grid. That was reconnaissance, she said. They are assessing our presence? And maybe assessing you personally, Ryan added. She did not deny it. One of the officers approached cautiously. General, should we alert station authorities? Kiera glanced at Ryan. He lifted a hand. If you alert them, panic spreads. If panic spreads, trade halts. If trade halts, smugglers get creative. That is an unusual concern, the officer said. It's a very practical one, Ryan replied. Kiera made her decision. Maintain discretion, she ordered. Continue passive monitoring. The officer returned to his station. Silence settled again. But it felt different now, charged, alert. Ryan stepped closer to the projection. You know they'll try something bolder eventually, he said. Yes. And you're prepared? Yes. He glanced at her sideways. Prepared doesn't mean eager. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I do not seek conflict, she said. I know. The hum of the command deck filled the space between them. You changed your shield harmonics, he continued. You disguised your reaction. That tells me you're not fighting ghosts anymore. Her long ears angled slightly forward. Explain. If this were 3 cycles ago, he said, you might have hunted that distortion immediately. Proved strength, made a statement. And now? Now you chose patience. She studied him. You attribute that to your influence? Ryan snorted. Absolutely not. I attribute it to you being smarter than your reputation allows. A faint breath escaped her, almost a laugh. You imply my reputation is flawed. I imply legends are inefficient. They waste energy maintaining posture. Her gaze softened, just slightly. And what do you waste energy on, Engineer Foster? He considered. Deflecting praise, he said, and overthinking. That is inefficient. Very. A quiet moment stretched between them, not awkward, not tense, simply present. Then the sensor officer spoke again. General, residual subspace echo detected, much weaker. Ryan leaned in. They're not gone, he said. Just further out. Kiera straightened. They will return, she said. Probably. And you will assist us again? Ryan hesitated only briefly. I fix things, he said. If someone's trying to break them, it becomes personal. She regarded him for a long moment. You are aware that proximity to us increases risk. Proximity to faulty gravity panels increases risk, he replied. I manage. For the first time since he'd met her, she reached out and placed her hand briefly on his forearm. It was not a warrior's grip, not a commander's gesture. It was human. Thank you, she said. Ryan blinked. Careful, he murmured. People will start thinking I'm important. You are, she said simply. He looked away uncomfortable. Well, he said, forcing a lighter tone, let's hope whoever's lurking out there hates parades. The command deck lights glowed steadily around them, calm for now. But somewhere beyond the station's outer perimeter, something watched and recalculated. And for the first time, Ryan felt less like a bystander to legend and more like a variable in someone else's equation. He wasn't sure whether to be flattered or concerned. The third night of the Dawn's Spear's stay, the station's artificial sunrise flickered on schedule, casting Dock 12 in a warm gold that tried very hard to feel natural. Ryan did not trust artificial sunrises either. He was halfway inside the Aurora's respite again, adjusting a temperamental plasma intake when his comm chimed. Engineer Foster, Kiera's voice said. Yes, General? Are you occupied? He looked at the intake manifold sparking faintly near his elbow. Define occupied. A brief pause. Could you join me in Observation Ring 3? Ryan blinked. Observation Ring 3 was not where one discussed shield harmonics. It was where one looked at stars and made philosophical decisions. On my way, he said, trying not to sound curious. He wiped his hands, changed his shirt, mostly because the last one still bore a coffee casualty, and made his way through the station's inner corridors. The ring extended beyond the primary hull, wrapped in transparent alloy panels that revealed the endless spread of space. When he stepped inside, he found her alone. The stars beyond shimmered in quiet constellations, distant and indifferent. Kiera stood near the viewport, her armor absent, replaced by a simpler uniform. Without the plating and command insignia, she seemed less like a symbol and more like a person standing in front of something vast. You requested the station's sunrise lighting, Ryan said as he approached. Yes. It's very flattering to everyone. She glanced at him briefly. Your station attempts optimism. It compensates for the existential void. A faint breath escaped her. He joined her at the viewport. For a moment, neither spoke. The Dawn Spear floated docked beside the station, its hull reflecting starlight in faint pulses. Beyond it, distant shipping lanes traced luminous threads. You have not asked about him, she said quietly. Ryan knew who she meant. I figured you'd tell me when you wanted to, he replied. She nodded once. Captain Elias Foster was inconvenient, she said. Ryan raised an eyebrow. That's not the word I expected. He challenged me constantly, she continued. He argued with my strategies. He questioned my risk assessments. Ryan smiled faintly. Sounds exhausting. He believed I was too cautious, she said. I believed he was reckless. And you were both right? Yes. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the viewport glass, overlaid with stars. He volunteered for the Legion against his family's wishes, she said. He claimed neutrality bored him. Ryan grimaced. I can't imagine. He did not fear death, she continued. He feared stagnation. Ryan shifted his weight. I fear paperwork, he offered. She almost smiled. When we were stationed on Akrith, she said, he asked me what I would do after the war. What did you say? I told him there would always be another war. Ryan looked at her. And he? He said that was the most depressing answer he had ever heard. Ryan let out a soft huff. He wasn't wrong. No. Silence stretched gently between them. After he died, she continued, I did not attend his memorial. Ryan glanced at her, surprised. I reviewed battle data instead, she said. I told myself efficiency honored him more than ceremony. And did it? She did not answer immediately. No, she said at last. Ryan leaned against the viewport railing. Grief doesn't respond well to efficiency, he said. It prefers chaos. Her ears tilted slightly. You speak from experience. He exhaled slowly. When my father died, I tried to fix the station's faulty airlock myself, he said. I thought if I corrected the error that killed him, it would balance something. And did it? No, Ryan replied. It just made the maintenance chief furious. That earned a small, genuine laugh. I spent years thinking I could outthink loss, he continued. Turns out it doesn't work that way. Kiera studied him carefully. You do not resent the resemblance, she said. Ryan considered. It's strange, he admitted. Knowing someone who looked like me did something extraordinary. Extraordinary is subjective. He held off artillery for 4 minutes, Ryan said gently. I can barely hold off docking fees. She watched him, measuring the tone beneath the joke. You are not him, she said. I know. And yet, she continued, your presence reopens. Corridors. Ryan tilted his head. That sounds architectural. In my mind, she clarified. He nodded slowly. Corridors aren't bad, he said. They just lead places you've avoided. Her gaze drifted back to the stars. I feared that seeing your face would feel like betrayal, she admitted, as though my memory of him would fracture. And does it? No. She turned toward him fully. It feels like proof that the universe does not erase patterns entirely, she said. It rearranges them. Ryan looked down at his hands. I don't want to replace him, he said quietly. I do not ask you to. I can't be a substitute hero, he added. I don't even like heroics. That is precisely why you could not replace him, she replied. He blinked. That sounded philosophical, he said. Are you sure you don't want to go back to tactical briefings? A faint smile touched her lips. I have conducted briefings for 3 cycles without pause, she said. This is unfamiliar. Talking without objectives? Yes. Highly inefficient, Ryan agreed solemnly. Another soft laugh escaped her. Outside, a cargo convoy drifted past the station, its lights blinking in orderly rhythm. You said earlier that I chose patience, she said. You did. That is not instinctive for me. Maybe it's learned. From you. From surviving, Ryan corrected. She considered that. I once believed strength meant never hesitating, she said, never showing fracture. And now? I am reconsidering. Ryan crossed his arms lightly. For what it's worth, he said, crying in my docking bay didn't reduce your legend. It just made you real. Her expression shifted, subtle but significant. Real is more dangerous, she said. Only to people who prefer myths. Silence returned, but it felt warmer now. A proximity alert chimed softly in the background of the ring. Ryan glanced toward the station's status panel. Relax, he said. Probably just someone miscalculating their approach vector. Kiera did not look away from him. You are not afraid, she observed. Oh, I am, he said lightly. I just don't let it schedule my day. Her gaze softened again. You think the unknown vessel will return? Yes. And you remain here? For now. That is a choice. He nodded. I fix what's in front of me, he said. If that includes mysterious observers and legendary generals working through grief, I'll adjust my schedule. She stepped slightly closer, not invading space, not retreating. I am leaving in 1 cycle, she said. Ryan felt a small, unexpected shift inside his chest. Back to endless wars? He asked gently. Back to responsibility. He nodded. Well, he said, forcing a lighter tone, if you need your shields recalibrated again, you know where to find me. She held his gaze. Yes, she said. I do. Outside the viewport, a faint shimmer flickered far beyond the station's perimeter, so subtle it might have been cosmic interference. Ryan did not see it. Kiera did. Her eyes narrowed slightly, though her voice remained calm. The universe rearranges patterns, she murmured. Ryan followed her gaze but saw only stars. I hope it rearranges them into something less dramatic, he said. Her lips curved once more, but her posture straightened, awareness returning. Perhaps, she said quietly. And in the vast, patient silence beyond the glass, something distant adjusted its trajectory. The first explosion did not sound like an explosion. It sounded like a door being slammed somewhere very far away. Ryan noticed because Dock 12's lighting flickered twice in a pattern he had never programmed. He looked up from the stabilizer coil he was recalibrating. "That's new," he muttered. A second vibration rippled through the station, stronger this time. Tools rattled against metal surfaces. The Aurora's respite emitted an offended chime. His wrist console lit up with cascading alerts. Unscheduled power surge. Outer ring. Subspace distortion detected. Civilian traffic scattering. Ryan inhaled slowly. "Well," he said to no one in particular, "there goes subtlety." The station's general alert siren began to pulse, not the shrill panic tone reserved for hull breaches, but the lower, controlled warning that meant something was wrong but still technically fixable. He tapped into Dock 12's external feed. Beyond the transparent hull panels, space no longer looked calm. Three distortions shimmered just beyond the perimeter, angular silhouettes bending light around themselves imperfectly, not fully cloaked, not cautious anymore. "Of course," Ryan murmured. "They brought friends." His calm flared. "Engineer Foster," Kiera's voice cut through, sharp and steady. "Report." "I was about to ask you the same," he replied. "Unidentified vessels have engaged civilian escorts," she said. "They are targeting power relays." Ryan's stomach tightened. "They're not here for you," he said. "They're destabilizing the port." "To isolate us," she answered, "or to make you choose between neutrality and defense." A distant concussive tremor rolled through the station. This one did sound like an explosion. Dock 12's gravity wavered for half a second. Ryan grabbed the nearest support beam. "Outer Ring 3 just lost partial shielding," he said, scanning incoming data. "They're hitting infrastructure, not military targets." "We are deploying interceptors," Kiera replied. "If you launch full countermeasures inside station limits, you'll tear this place apart." Silence for half a heartbeat. "I am aware," she said. Another shockwave reverberated through the hull. Somewhere in the station, alarms escalated. Ryan's console flashed red. "Life support, grid fluctuation, nursery module." He froze. "That's not tactical," he said. "That's cruel." "What is it?" she demanded. "They're overloading civilian relays. Life support in the residential ring is destabilizing." He could hear controlled chaos in the background of her transmission. Orders issued, confirmations acknowledged. "I need access to your power routing interface," he said quickly. "If we synchronize your auxiliary grid with the station's failing relays, we can stabilize the nursery module without firing a shot. That would expose our internal systems." "They're already poking you," he shot back. "This is about preventing suffocation." A pause. "Access granted," she said. His console flooded with Legion encryption layers. "Don't judge my shortcuts," he muttered as he dove into the interface. Dock 12 rattled again. Somewhere above, the Dawn Spear's engines thrummed to life. Not in full combat burn, but enough to shift orientation. Ryan rerouted energy flow diagrams across his projection. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's not blow up today." He synchronized the station's faltering relay with the Dawn Spear's secondary shield capacitors. A warning flared. Incompatible frequency. Risk of cascade failure. "Relax," he muttered. "We'll adjust." He tweaked the harmonic offset by fractional degrees. Across the station, lights dimmed and brightened in uneven pulses. On the other end of the comm, Kiera's voice remained steady. "Interceptors engaging hostile drones," she reported. "They are deploying ion disruptors." "Tell your pilots to avoid direct pursuit," Ryan said through clenched teeth. "They want you outside the perimeter. You assume diversion. I assume they're not idiots." A sharp jolt threw him sideways. Dock 12's outer panel cracked along one seam. Vacuum alarms blared. Ryan slammed his palm against an emergency seal control. The panel's breach field activated, shimmering into place just as atmosphere began to thin. "Minor inconvenience," he breathed. "Status," Kiera demanded. "I'm still inside," he replied. "Dock 12 lost a window, but I've sealed it. Return to a secure location." "Define secure," he said, fingers flying across the console. Because the nursery module is 30 seconds from losing oxygen. Silence again. Then quietly, proceed. He finished recalibrating the harmonic link. Routing auxiliary power now, he said. The projection spiked dangerously high. Come on, he muttered. Just behave. A second later, the life support alert flickered from red to amber, then green. Ryan sagged slightly against the console. Nobody suffocates today, he said softly. On the command deck of the Dawn Spear, Kiera watched tactical feeds update. Nursery module stabilized, an officer confirmed. Good, she said. Hostile vessels repositioning, another reported. They are adjusting trajectory. They did not anticipate power reinforcement, she said. Back in Dock 12, Ryan scanned external feeds again. The three distortions were closer now. Legion interceptors streaked between them in controlled arcs, exchanging pulses of ion fire that lit space in brief, violent flashes. Ryan swallowed. Kiera, he said quietly, they're testing response thresholds again. Yes. They hit civilians to measure your restraint. Yes. And now? Now they escalate. As if summoned by her words, one of the hostile vessels shed its distortion field entirely. Its hull glinted darkly, etched with angular plating and asymmetrical weapon arrays. Ryan felt his pulse spike. That's not a scout, he said. No, she agreed. On the command deck, officers awaited her order. She did not raise her voice. Deploy full shield perimeter, she commanded. Maintain defensive posture within station limits. General, an officer warned, that constrains our firing arcs. I am aware. Ryan listened to her calm directives and felt something shift in his chest. This was not vengeance. This was protection. Dock 12 trembled again as a stray energy pulse struck the station's outer frame. Ryan's console spat new warnings. Your shield harmonics are holding, he reported quickly. They're adjusting frequency. We anticipated that, she replied. Yeah, well, anticipation is different when someone's shooting at you. A faint hint of humor threaded through her next words. I will take that under advisement. A Legion interceptor clipped one of the hostile drones, sending it spiraling into debris. Another hostile vessel pivoted, charging weapons. Ryan stared at the projection. If they fire inside that vector, they'll hit the commerce ring. Intercept trajectory, Kiera ordered. Her flagship shifted slightly, inserting its bulk between the hostile vessel and the station. Ryan's breath caught. That's not subtle, he said. No. A concentrated energy beam lanced outward from the hostile ship. It struck the Dawn Spear's shields with blinding intensity. The station shuddered. Ryan gripped the console. Shield integrity, he demanded. 87%, an officer reported through the open channel. Ryan scanned the harmonic readouts. They're targeting your previous fracture points, he said. They will not find them. They're adapting. As are we. The Dawn Spear returned fire. Controlled bursts, precise and measured. One hostile vessel's engines flared erratically. Another broke formation. They're reassessing, Ryan said. A long, tense minute passed. Then abruptly, the hostile ships disengaged. Their engines flared bright, and they leapt into distorted retreat vectors. Silence fell across the external feed. Only debris and fading energy trails remained. Ryan exhaled slowly. Well, he murmured, that was rude. On the command deck, Kiera remained still until confirmation came. Hostile signatures lost, an officer announced. She nodded once. Maintain alert status, she said. Back in Dock 12, Ryan leaned against the console, heart still racing. His comm chimed again. Engineer Foster, Kiera said. Still here, he replied. You stabilized civilian life support under fire. You parked your warship in front of a beam weapon, he countered. A brief silence. Are you injured? She asked. Just mildly inconvenienced by existential terror. That is not a medical category. It should be. A faint breath escaped her. The station remains intact because of your intervention, she said. Ryan looked at the cracked panel sealed by emergency field. It remains intact because you chose defense over retaliation, he replied. On the other end of the line, she did not immediately respond. Outside, the artificial sunrise lighting flickered uncertainly, then steadied. For now, the station breathed. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. They'll be back, he said quietly. Yes, she answered. He opened his eyes again. Next time, he added, let's hope they aim for something less dramatic. Her voice softened, just slightly. Hope is inefficient, she said. Maybe, he replied, but it keeps the lights on. And in the lingering hum of restored systems, both of them understood that whatever came next would not be measured only in shield percentages or tactical victories, but in the fragile choice to protect instead of destroy. The day the Legion fleet returned to the neutral port, the station's gravity hiccuped twice as if reconsidering its life choices. I was elbow deep inside a plasma manifold when the lights flickered and my diagnostic console began reciting an old Earth lullaby in binary. That was how I knew General Kiera had come back. Please tell me that's not another armada, I muttered, wriggling out from beneath the intake coil. The manifold snapped at my sleeve like an offended animal. I snapped back. We had that kind of relationship. Outside my workshop viewport, silver hulls slid into formation like disciplined stars. The insignia of the Stellar Legion shimmered along their sides, constellations arranged into a blade. They looked less like ships and more like promises sharpened to a point. My assistant drone, Patch, rotated his optic lens toward me. Probability of incoming dramatic conversation? 93%. Only 93? I wiped grease from my hands. I must be losing my touch. Months had passed since Kiera first stepped into my workshop and cried because my face carried the echo of a man who had died for her. In that time, we had repaired more than ships. We had sifted through old battle recordings, reconstructed the final moments of her husband, Lieutenant Daniel Hayes, and uncovered the truth behind the ambush that had wiped out half her battalion. It hadn't been incompetence. It hadn't been fate. It had been sabotage, coded into Legion navigation systems by a faction that feared peace more than war. We had exposed them, quietly, carefully, with enough data to make even the most ambitious admiral reconsider their ambitions. The conspirators were gone now, retired, arrested, or suddenly interested in farming on distant moons. The Legion had shifted course. Peace negotiations with 3 Outer Rim coalitions were underway. The galaxy, for once, seemed interested in breathing. The workshop door opened without the courtesy of knocking. It didn't need to. The air changed first, becoming sharper, like it had been honed. Kiera stepped inside. She looked as she always did, tall, composed, clad in dark Legion armor that seemed woven from starlight and restraint. Her long ears, elegant and slightly tapered, curved back through her silver hair, like arcs of pale flame. They were more expressive than she ever admitted. Now they were angled forward, attentive, almost cautious. Behind her, 2 Legion officers waited, and then, at a glance from her, retreated. The door sealed. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. Months ago, that look had shattered her. Now it held. You're leaking coolant, she said at last. That's not coolant, that's character. She almost smiled. Progress. The fleet returns from the Sepharan Accord, she said. It is signed. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. So the galaxy chooses not to explode this week. It appears so. Patch emitted a celebratory chirp and launched a small holographic firework that ricocheted off the ceiling and turned into a smiling nebula. Kiera watched it with mild suspicion. You still allow that machine creative autonomy? She asked. Only on weekends. She stepped closer, boots quiet on the metal floor. I felt the familiar flicker of something complicated in my chest. Not grief, not exactly, but the memory of it. I had spent months learning to exist as myself in the presence of her memories. At first, I had felt like an imposter in my own skin. Now I felt anchored. The investigation concluded this morning, she said. All evidence archived, all names accounted for. Daniel's final report has been entered into Legion history with full honors. I nodded. He deserved that. Yes. Her voice softened, but it did not break. He did. Silence settled between us, not heavy, just aware. You know, I said, leaning back against my workbench, if anyone had told me that fixing thruster coils would lead to galactic political reform, I would have charged more. Her ears tilted in a way I had come to recognize as amusement. Your invoice was already excessive. Quality work costs. You replaced a quantum relay with a refurbished model and a handwritten note that said, "Trust me." It worked. She exhaled something dangerously close to a laugh. I considered that a victory. "I came," she said, "to ask you something." That's usually how conversations begin. Her gaze held mine steadily. The Legion is establishing a permanent technical core within neutral territories, independent from military command, transparent, accountable. We require someone who understands both machines and the cost of their misuse. I blinked. You want me to train engineers? I want you to lead them. I stared at her, then at the grease on my hands. General, I once rewired a coffee dispenser to threaten people who asked for decaf. It was an effective deterrent. That's not the point. She stepped closer still. I could see faint lines at the corners of her eyes now, lines that hadn't been there months ago. Not from age, from living. You taught me, she said quietly, that grief does not chain us to the past. It can anchor us, yes, but it can also steady us while we move. Daniel believed the Legion could be better than endless war. I believe that too. But belief requires structure. It requires people willing to build instead of destroy. And you think I'm that person? I think, she said, and her long ears lowered just slightly, vulnerable in a way she would never display before her officers, that you are not him, and that is precisely why. The words settled into me like a new gravity. For months I had feared that my resemblance to a dead hero was the only reason she stood here, that I was a shadow she tolerated because she needed to look at something that hurt less than memory. But she was looking at me now, not through me. I can't replace him, I said. I do not ask you to. And if I fail? You will, she said simply. So will I. That is the nature of constructing anything worthwhile. Patch projected a small hologram of me heroically holding a wrench like a sword. Statistical analysis indicates a 71% chance of moderately successful heroism. See, I said, moderate heroism is my brand. Kiera's lips curved, unmistakably this time. The galaxy does not require perfection from you, Ryan Foster. Only honesty. I pushed off the workbench and walked to the viewport. Outside, the Legion ships gleamed against the dark, no longer poised to strike but aligned like guardians. For the first time, they didn't feel like instruments of inevitable catastrophe. They felt adjustable. I had spent my life hiding in neutral ports, fixing the aftermath of other people's decisions. Staying small had been safe, predictable. No one mourned a mechanic, but someone had once mourned a soldier who looked like me. And in unraveling that grief, I had found my own measure of courage. If I do this, I said slowly, I'm not wearing armor. You would look absurd in armor. Good. I plan to remain absurd. That has become evident. I turned back to her. I'll build your core. Transparent systems, fail-safes, civilian oversight, and I reserve the right to redesign Legion Coffee. Her expression grew solemn again, but not distant. Agreed. She extended her hand. Months ago, when she first reached toward me, it had been with trembling disbelief. Now her grip was steady, warm, real. As our hands clasped, I felt something settle. Not the weight of expectation, but the alignment of purpose. I wasn't a ghost. I wasn't a substitute. I was an engineer who had stumbled into a story larger than himself and decided finally to stay. Outside, the fleet began to power down in coordinated sequence, lights dimming like a constellation preparing for dawn. The station's gravity stabilized. My console stopped singing lullabies. Well, I said, glancing at the half-dismantled plasma manifold behind me, I suppose I should finish this repair before I start reforming galactic infrastructure. A sensible beginning, she said. And General? Yes? If this all goes terribly wrong, I'm blaming you. Her ears angled back in unmistakable amusement. That is also acceptable. She moved toward the door, then paused. Ryan. Thank you for reminding me that moving forward does not mean leaving him behind. I considered that. He's part of you. That doesn't vanish. It just changes shape. She inclined her head once deeply. Then she stepped out into the corridor, where officers straightened and saluted as she passed. I watched her go, then turned back to my tools. Patch, I said, sliding beneath the manifold again. Remind me to draft a proposal on ethical starship architecture. Already begun, he replied. Title suggestion, do not secretly weaponize navigation systems. Catchy. The manifold sparked obligingly as I tightened the final bolt. Outside, the Legion ships held steady, no longer symbols of inevitable war, but of a fragile, deliberate peace. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was repairing the ruins of someone else's choices. I felt like I was building something that might last. And if the galaxy's most powerful warrior woman ever cried again, I knew it would not be because she was trapped in the past, but because she had allowed herself to hope.